Most people think therapy is neutral, that it's just this safe little room where nothing outside matters. All that matters is you and how you're reacting to things. But the truth is, therapy is political, and pretending it's not is exactly how people stay sick. Think about it for a second. The issues we bring into therapy, they don't exist in a vacuum. They come from somewhere. Poverty, racism, homophobia, religious abuse, ableism. And if a therapist says, let's not talk politics, let's just focus on you, what they're really saying is, I'm siding with the system that hurt you. Neutrality is a myth, and myths like that keep people stuck. We're in a moment where mental health is everywhere. TikTok is full of quick therapy tips, affirmations, self care routines. Instagram is full of good vibes only. BetterHelp ads pop up like subscription boxes. Hashtag healing journey, hashtag mental health matters. But the conversation is always framed around the individual, like your pain is just a glitch in your brain chemistry. And here's why that matters. Because if therapy stays in that individual only lane, then the systemic stuff, racism, queerphobia, religious trauma, capitalism, burning people out, it all gets erased. You can't heal what you can't name. And if you're someone from a marginalized community, erasing politics is basically erasing your story. That's why this conversation matters right now. So, I have a few points. First one, therapy was political from the start. Psychology didn't appear in a vacuum. It emerged inside social and political contexts, white, Western, male, often wealthy. Those who set the rules decided what counted as normal, what counted as illness, and who was allowed to exist without that judgment. Look at the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Until 1973, being gay was considered a mental disorder. Women were pathologized for hysteria. Autistic children were often blamed on refrigerator mothers. These aren't neutral observations. They were reflections of cultural anxieties and religious morals and political control. Even spirituality played a role. Early psychologists often dismissed or pathologized religious experiences that didn't fit Protestant norms, such as mystical visions, trance states, or non-Christian ritual practices that could be labeled as delusional. So, from the start, therapy was policing who got to be healthy according to dominant societal values. And when people say therapy is just about helping the individual, I just want to shake people and say, no, it's not, and it never was. Therapy has always reflected the politics of the culture around it. And this matters because when therapy claims to be neutral, it's really just reflecting the values of the people who wrote the rule book. And what was considered a disorder wasn't just about symptoms, it was about who fit into the social order. Neutrality, in that sense, was never real. The question now is whether we'll be honest about it. So, when clients from marginalized communities enter therapy, their suffering often isn't recognized as valid. But the thing is that they're not broken. They're responding logically to a world designed to hurt and oppress them. Therapy that ignores that history only perpetuates harm. Point number 2 is neutrality is status quo in disguise. Here's the trap with neutrality. It sounds safe. Majority of therapists will say, oh, I'm neutral, I'm just here to listen. But the thing is, refusing to engage with politics in itself is a political choice. By staying silent, you're siding with whatever the dominant culture says is normal. And examples are everywhere. A black client experiencing workplace microaggressions is told, oh, don't dwell on race, focus on your feelings. An ex-evangelical client who experienced spiritual abuse is told to forgive and move on. Don't let religion define your anxiety. A queer client navigating family rejection is told to manage expectations instead of unpacking the harm that was done. Each time, the therapist may think they're being neutral, but in reality, they're just upholding the system that's causing the harm. In my own experience, my first therapist was a Christian therapist who then moved to Catholic social services later on. And I was struggling with the faith I grew up in. Every week, without fail, the counselor gave me more Bible verses. There was no conversation about when someone tried to cast demons out of me in a side room of the church. There was no discussion of how it felt when I had questions and the pastor told my parents not to let me write my own confirmation speech. Even history shows this pattern. Early psychological testing in the US was explicitly used to support eugenics programs, racial hierarchies, and assimilation policies for indigenous people. Therapy and psychological tools weren't neutral observers of human behavior. They actively reflected the power structures of the time. So think about it like this. In an ecosystem, if the soil is poisoned and you do nothing, the poison spreads. Neutrality in therapy works the same way. Ignoring systemic oppression doesn't make it go away, it helps it persist. Therapists can't pretend systems don't exist. Neutrality in therapy doesn't protect your clients. It allows oppression to persist under the guise of professionalism. True healing acknowledges the systems that are shaping the struggle. My third point is that real healing means you have to name systems. If the world is an ecosystem, and I believe it is, then your suffering is never just yours. It's connected to the environment you live in, the communities around you, the history you inherited. Healing requires seeing the system as part of the story. That's why I love acceptance and commitment therapy and value-centered approaches. It doesn't say, get rid of symptoms. It says, live by your values. But the catch is that if your values push against oppression, that means therapy then has to name the oppression. Otherwise, it's not value-based. For example, a client might want to feel safe at work. If their workplace is transphobic, it's not enough to teach coping strategy and cognitive reframing. You have to acknowledge the environment and support the client in strategizing against that harm. Healing isn't just about personal growth. It's about survival and thriving in an ecosystem that often works against marginalized people. Or a spiritual example, someone recovering from religious trauma. Their pain isn't just guilt or fear. It's the cumulative effect of doctrines, leaders, and communities that imposed control over their life. Or consider a client experiencing systemic racism. Teaching them coping strategies without acknowledging the racialized structures is like handing a plant water, but keeping it in a toxic soil. In my practice, I see healing as an ecosystem problem. The goal isn't just individual adjustment. It's survival, resistance, and flourishing in a world that often works against marginalized people. Healing isn't about fixing broken individuals. It's about helping people realign with what matters, resist harm, and regenerate life in their community. That's political by definition. That's why therapy must be culture-centered and identity-affirming. It names the harms, validates the experience, and equips clients to navigate and push against the systems that harm them. When therapy names systems, clients see that their suffering isn't a personal failure. It's a response to forces that need to be challenged. That's the political part. Healing and justice are inseparable. Now, here's where I break from a lot of mainstream therapy. Grad school nowadays trains you in what's called person-centered therapy. And the idea is if you give someone unconditional positive regard, they'll figure out their own answers. Sounds nice. It works for some people. Works for a lot of people. But here's the problem. Person-centered therapy assumes that the main barrier to your growth is inside you, and that if you just feel safe enough or confident enough, you'll blossom and figure it out. I don't think that. Because what if the thing that's choking your growth isn't inside you, but outside? What if it's racism, transphobia, religious trauma, poverty, colonialism, a purely person-centered approach, risks telling marginalized clients, you already have all the answers inside of you, when the truth is their suffering comes from systems stacked against them. And here's where my job comes in. My role isn't just to sit back and nod while you untangle all of this alone. My job is to help you. If I have access to resources, power, or a voice in a system that's hurting you, then part of my work is to advocate for you, to push on those systems from the inside so you're not fighting them alone. Grad school taught me that advocacy was optional, that a therapist could choose whether or not to step into that role. I don't think that's true. When the system itself is part of the problem, staying silent isn't neutrality, it's complicitly, and I refuse to be complicit. That's why I practice culture-centered and identity-affirming therapy. Instead of pretending you exist in a vacuum, I start with your context, your story, your culture, your politics, your spirituality, your community. Therapy isn't just about sitting across from me and feeling seen. It's about helping you map the ecosystem you live in so you can resist what harms you and build what heals you. Because therapy that ignores identity ends up reinforcing the exact forces that break people down. So what do we do with all of this? Stop pretending therapy is neutral. We recognize that neutrality isn't safety. It's just siding with the strongest voice in the room. If your pain is caused or amplified by oppressive systems, pretending those systems don't exist doesn't help you heal. It keeps you trapped. When we see therapy as political, it doesn't mean every session has to be a debate. It doesn't mean that every session has to surround politics. But it means that we're going to be honest that your suffering didn't appear out of nowhere. It's connected to systems, to culture, to history. Healing requires understanding that connection. And here's the thing. Knowing that therapy is political isn't just about theory. It changes how we show up in our lives. It means noticing that systems that shape your relationships in workplace and family and community. It means speaking up when harm happens. It means building support systems that reflect your values rather than the dominant culture's rules. In an ecosystem, health isn't just about one plant or one tree. It's about the soil, the water, the air, and how they all work together. Human healing is the same. It's about restoring balance, not just inside you, but in the environment you live in the communities you care about, and in the systems you have access to influence. So, here's the takeaway. Your pain is real. The forces shaping it are real. And the work of understanding and resisting and reshaping those forces is about caring for yourself internally and healing. Therapy is political, and acknowledging that is the first step toward growth for you and for the world around you. So if you've ever been told your pain was just in your head or that therapy should stay neutral, I want you to remember this. Your pain is real, and the systems around you are part of the story. So don't settle for neutrality. Demand healing that honors the truth. Take a moment and feel it. Like, your pain isn't just yours. It's a response to the world you've lived in, the systems that shaped you, and the forces that have tried to hold you down. And yet, you're here, growing, resisting, and choosing your own path. That's the work. That's the politics of healing. So, I'll leave you with this question. Where have you seen therapy treated like it's neutral when it really wasn't? Because the world is an ecosystem, and the only way to heal it is to live your life to benefit.